Howdy, Jed from Cook Culture. So last week, we just finished our first ever virtual fry pan trade-in. One of the biggest questions that came out of the fry pan trade-in that I want to address today is seasoning enameled cookware. This can be anything like your Le Creuset or Staub, two biggest names in the world, but anything else that's enameled. So enamelling is a glass-based coating that can be colored or black, white, whichever, and it goes on the raw cast iron and it gets baked on incredibly hard and it becomes a very hard, like rock style finish to it. Great for keeping it looking elegant, even though this guy's a little bit dirty and needs some help. But what I wanted to address today is that people buy it because it's beautiful and also it's cared for and it won't rust quickly. It's not as laborious to look after Staub as it is raw cast iron, but you can also season it. So the enamelling should be and can be seasoned. And a lot of people don't know that. So they use it and they you know, it's okay, it's not their favorite. Then they buy like a raw piece of cast iron, they season appropriately and it's like, oh, it's so much better. The reason for that is that they just haven't seasoned the enameled cast iron. So what I wanted to kind of go over today is if you have anything like this at home, what to do to get it ready, and then how we're going to season enameled cast iron the best way. What's the best method for doing enameled? So first, what we want to do is inspect the surface. Look for anything that's a carbon buildup. There's a little bit on this fry pan, but there's a lot on this oven. So I've got a 7-quart oven here, and there's lots of carbon buildup in it. So all over the edges, all inside. So what I need to do is I need to go to the sink with my chainmail scrubby and scrub that down and get that as raw as I possibly can, because we don't want to season over carbon. The seasoning will just peel off and it will just be really crappy. So if you're ever re-seasoning a pan or you're taking a kind of a beat up pan and you're making it better, just get something really abrasive, not sharp, but abrasive, like a chainmail scrubby. Scrub it down. Sometimes it helps to warm the pan first. Scrub it down, let it soak, scrub it down, maybe use some Barkeeper's Friend or some Comet and get it as clean as you possibly can before you start seasoning. So we're gonna do the oven method. Got the oven preheating now. We're gonna get these cleaned up. I've already done that in other videos, so I'm not gonna show you me cleaning pans, but I'm gonna get them prepared and ready to go. And then I will show you the oven method for seasoning Staub or Le Creuset, anything with an enameled surface. Okay, so I've finished washing the pot. It was in pretty bad shape. I've washed the pan also. That was in really good shape. I'm just taking it out of a warm oven. So I washed them and dried them in the oven. This is the best way to dry them right up. Also, what's really nice about drying them in the oven is that they get warm for the application of our wax. So I got quite a lot of the carbon out, took a lot of the feeling of it out. There's some staining that's inside there. I can't feel anything anymore, and that's the point. So if you're cleaning it and you still can see little dark black bits, if you can feel smoothness everywhere, don't be concerned. That's good. Sometimes you can spend a huge amount of time on a tiny little mark and you may never get it out. So if you've gotten the majority, you know, I got probably 90% of that and I got 100% of the buildup out of there. And it feels nice and smooth. And same thing with the fry pan. It was in good shape, but I gave it a wipe down. It definitely looks even like almost like brand new. So we've got these guys now clean, ready to go. I'm gonna use Buzzy Wax. So Buzzy Wax, we sell Buzzy Wax. We also sell the Field seasoning paste. And I'm gonna use Buzzy Wax on this application for really no reason except that I have it. And you know, Buzzy Wax, Field, it works as well as each other. The Field container is larger when you're buying it. That's the only difference. So I'm gonna take a little bit on my rag and I'm going to just make a thin layer over the bottom, just all around. So a nice thin layer. Make sure that it's shiny and coated, come up the sides. The sides are less of an issue. You know, if you have less sticking, you're gonna get less staining. So it's really the bottom. You wanna make sure that is non-stick. So we've got that all around. So that's shiny, ready to go. We're gonna take the fry pan, take a little bit more wax, just give it a wipe. Hot pan, give it a wipe all around. If I was doing a raw cast iron pan, I would do the backside also. But all you're gonna do if you season the backside is you're gonna make this black and yucky. So on stove, do not season the colored exterior. So a shiny glaze all over that. So now I'm gonna take those two pans and put them into the oven inverted. So I'm gonna invert the fry pan. And this guy's not as hot. I'm gonna invert the oven. So we're gonna now bake those off at 450 degrees for about 45 minutes. Doesn't so much matter, 35, 45, 55. What we're doing is that we're causing polymerization. So polymerization is where that wet oil that you just saw, all the moisture evaporates and the leftover oil, the hardened oil becomes hardened, bonds together and creates a Teflon type non-stick finish. And we'll do this once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, depending on how it looks. But once this is all done, I'm gonna take them out, we're gonna let them cool, and then we'll take a look at them. Okay, fresh out of the oven. So when I took them out of the oven, they had a little bit of spotting on them. So even though I put a really, really thin layer on the second time, it had started to kind of bead almost, kind of group together and create a couple little of wet spots, even though it was inverted and it didn't drip. There wasn't an excess amount of oil. If you have too much oil, it drips out of the pan onto the bottom of your stove. But what I did when it just first came out, and these guys are still really hot, is I grabbed my oily cloth and on the hot pan, I just went around it and they've started to cool a little bit more now. But it was piping hot and I took a tiny little bit of oil, went around it and smoothed it over and it started to smoke a little bit. Not a bellowing smoke, just a little bit of smoke. And it has coated it beautifully. So I'm gonna now let these guys sit and dry. So it has 2 baked on 45-minute coats and I just put a fresh coat on it and it's gonna dry with those on it. So the heat will continue to dry that off. So that is gonna give it a really good solid base for seasoning. Both of these pans are really nicely seasoned and ready to go, like that guy there. So they look beautiful, they look ready to use. What we do now is we've done the oven method for the pre-seasoning. Post-seasoning, we would do the stovetop method. So what I would do is that whatever I cooked in it, however the pan's finished, I would either just wipe it out or I would take it to the stove and I would, to the sink, and I would scrub it down and I would clean it up. However, I'm gonna get it back to normal. If I've really caked something on it and I've had to really scrub on it, I would have to start the seasoning process again. But if I'm just taking a bit of carbonized food, which isn't an issue, off, use my metal scrubby and wipe it down and get it onto the hob. I put it on some heat and then I put a little bit of wax. Sometimes there's enough wax just on my dirty cloth. Wipe it down, let it just start to heat up so it gets to a bit of a smoke point, turn it off, let it go. Then it should look exactly like that again. Each time I do that, I go through that process. So I use fuzzy wax. I use field paste, that is a seasoning cream. Grapeseed oil works perfectly, and those are the only things I ever use for seasoning. I don't use olive oil, I don't use anything else, but I end up using paste because I find that the wax helps to adhere. So, end of the day, we cleaned with some Barkeeper's Friend. That carbonization that was on there was really intense. I needed some support. This is really toxic. I really highly recommend not using this if you don't have to. These needed that work. Well, the pan didn't, but the pot really, really did. I spent probably 10 minutes scrubbing this thing with Barkeeper's Friend. That's what happens if you ignore your cookware over time. So I've put a lot of elbow grease into this guy to get him up and going. He's now in really great shape. The pan was in quite good shape anyways. It just was really dry and it needed a good solid seasoning. So if you have a pan that is looking really nasty, it's kind of brown and cakey and got all stuck to it and it just looks crappy and you think it's somehow not good or broken, if it's cast iron, you can recover it, no matter how old it is, no matter what piece it is. If you have chipped and cracked enamel, that's a whole different story. But if it's just dirty, you can get it clean. So no problem, and you can enameled, with enameled coating, finish, you can season and be really successful cooking without the need of non-stick finish. So I hope that was useful. So let me know if you have any questions below, and thanks so much.